Hello and welcome back. We are at day 7 of the 100 days of 1%, our 100-day journey of small incremental changes that each build on each other for monumental impact. Now you may have noticed I am sitting in a slightly different location today. I am sitting on the floor because I figured if my crazy dog is going to interrupt us, you may as well see her. Though of course she's now too short to be in the camera. But I'm Dr. Brenna Murphy. I'm the Lazy Naturopath, and that nose is Bellatrix. This is my dog Bellatrix, who is my super zoomy Brittany Spaniel, or technically a Brittany, and she's the one who's making all of the noise in the backgrounds of the videos. Sorry, my neighborhood is noisy, so if I have the door open, you hear cars. If I have the door closed, you hear my dog. But welcome back for Bellatrix and I to take you through phase 3, sugar, stress, and speed. And this is the phase that most people get stuck at. This is where most people are, that drives them in to see us, and where they get frustrated and dietary changes they're making aren't shifting things. They're tired all the time, but then they can't sleep, or they're waking up at 3 in the morning and can't fall back asleep. At the same time, they're dragging throughout the day. They have brain fog. They're living on coffee, or crashing when they drink coffee. All they want to do is eat sugar, even though they don't actually want to eat sugar. This sugar stress speed imbalance is really common, and conventional medicine doesn't have a lot of ways to address it effectively, but naturopaths have a lot of ways to address this effectively. So this is where we shine, one of the big areas where we shine, because we are specialists in knowing how the different body systems work together, both positively and negatively. And we have lots of tools for strengthening and rebalancing systems, where conventional medicine has lots of tools for quick fixes, removing, rebuilding, big repairs, but not necessarily coming in and fine-tuning. And this system is all about fine-tuning. So the 3 players here are your pancreas, that's sugar, your adrenal glands, that's stress, and your thyroid, that's speed. And at one point, one of my videos way back, I compared them to the Real Housewives, and they kind of do have different but somewhat dramatic personalities. So your pancreas does a lot of things, but on the endocrine system, one of its main jobs is sugar balancing. So when you have really high blood sugar, it releases something called insulin that you probably have heard of, that sucks the sugar out of your bloodstream. And it does that by moving it into muscle cells, moving it into fat cells, getting it to be used by the tissues as quickly as possible. And when your sugar is low, it releases something called glucagon, which does the opposite. It puts sugar into your bloodstream. So pulling it out of muscle, pulling it out of the liver, pulling it out of fat. But if our sugar is constantly high and that insulin is constantly high, our muscle cells get full of sugar in the form of glycogen. Or some of our fat cells just are like, I'm done, I've had plenty. And now the sugar gets stored as fat in appropriate places like our liver, and our abdominal fat cells will always take in fat. But the other side effect of that high insulin is it's a one-way door. So if insulin's high, sugar is going into fat cells, and we need insulin to be low and glucagon to be high for fat to come out of fat cells and be turned back into sugar. So constantly high insulin will actually block you from burning fat for fuel. So even though you have energy stored away, you can't access it, which is one of the many stressors that affects the adrenal glands. Our number 2 part of this trio, stress. The adrenals do a myriad of functions in the body. I compare them to the mom of the body a lot, because they sort of do a lot of different things in the background, keeping everybody else running well. And when the adrenals work well, you don't even know that they're doing their job. But when they fail, it's a catastrophe. And it's pretty rare, luckily, for adrenals to completely fail, but it's really common for adrenals to struggle. And this struggle is called adrenal fatigue, or more technically, general maladaptation syndrome, GAS. And what happens when adrenals struggle is First, they have to overproduce the stress hormone cortisol. When you're stressed, that they're constantly pumping out cortisol to respond to stress, cortisol to respond to stress, similar to your pancreas constantly pumping out insulin to respond to blood sugar. And then they just get exhausted and can't make cortisol effectively anymore. But when they're not making, and so cortisol levels just drop low. Now the challenge here is because adrenals make so many hormones, when we're making primarily cortisol, all the other hormones are being underproduced, which includes estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. This is the one source of testosterone in a female's body. Even aldosterone, which plays a role in fluid balance, cortisone, which is our innate ability to control inflammation. No, most of the resources are being directed towards cortisol, so everything else is being neglected. And then when the adrenals tank, nothing's being made well, cortisol or any of the other stuff. So we have an excess cortisol and then a deficient cortisol. In both cases, we have a deficiency of everything else. Now, one of the things cortisol does is it raises your blood sugar. So it plays into that insulin resistance issue because it's pumping blood sugar up because it's preparing us to be in part of fight or flight. So we're supposed to be fighting off the bear or running from the bear. So we need lots of blood sugar in that situation. But in the reality of the modern world is most of us are stressed while seated. So we're not burning off that blood sugar, which is going back to signal the pancreas to say that blood sugar is high, which is triggering insulin. And so we have this this negative play off of each other of cortisol driving up insulin, driving up cortisol, driving up insulin, until we have fat where we don't want it. We don't have any energy, we can't respond to stress, or we're responding to stress using things like epinephrine and norepinephrine, which epinephrine is more commonly known as adrenaline. So we have a very anxious response to stress, but not a good rebuilding. And then all of this affects the thyroid. Now, most people are familiar with the thyroid function, and a lot of times it'll be compared to a thermostat. So it kind of has a set point in the body. I hate the thermostat comparison. I think does not actually capture how the thyroid works. The thyroid is more like the horsepower in your car, but let's say you actually had a knob on your dashboard where you could adjust the horsepower. So we can turn up the horsepower of this imaginary car and make it a Lamborghini. We can turn it way down and make it a Yugo, or we can have it sort of in the midpoint and make it a nice new sedan. So when your body doesn't have enough nutrients, the thyroid won't work as well. So we're kind of going towards Yugo. When cortisol is low, the thyroid can do its job, but the hormone can't be delivered effectively. So we're going from Lambo to Yugo. And then there are nutrients like vitamin D that are important for thyroid function. Iodine is important for, you can't make thyroid hormone without iodine. And so all of these things keep turning down the horsepower of your vehicle, meaning that even when you have fuel, you're still driving a Yugo. And so the sugar stress store imbalances are really common. The symptoms for high versus low versus just erratic look really similar. And it's really common for hypothyroidism or somebody to think they have hypothyroidism, but it's really an adrenal issue. And really the only way to evaluate where you truly are in this morass of symptomatology and imbalances is do testing. So there's no clinical symptom picture that truly holds, even though there are hypothetical symptom pictures. Again, when your adrenals are overworking, your thyroid is calming down and balancing each other, often problematically, but they're trying, and vice versa, and the pancreas plays a role. So the key takeaway here is you have to test. The testing is not necessarily difficult. For thyroid, it's a good comprehensive blood test. For adrenals, it's a 4-point saliva test to look at cortisol throughout the day. So we're seeing levels and rhythm, super critical to get both. And the blood test can actually trigger cortisol levels to go up. So the saliva test is much more telling for the actual body function. And then pancreas, again, is a simple blood sugar or simple blood test. So it's not complicated testing, but it is common for it to be done poorly, to be done spottily and not get a full picture. And we're going to go more in depth into how to test these different things and what you should be asking your doctor for. But this is a 1% where you want to start with what's actually happening and working, and you want to work with somebody who knows what those results mean. So this part's critical. This part has huge payoff. This unwinds everything else coming in the next two phases. The sugar stress store phase. This is the big one. This is the core. And again, I'm going to dive deeper into each individual part further down the line. But come back tomorrow for phase 4, firefighting. Because this is where the chronic issues come in. These are the ones that you're so used to living with, you don't even know you have them. Like, you think you feel like your most brilliant version of yourself. But when we clear up the smoldering fire, you'll realize that you have been living in a fog for way too long. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow for day 8 of our 100 days of 1%. I'm Dr. Brenna Murphy. I'm the Lazy Naturopath, coming at you late Thursday night with day 7's video. Bye, guys.